You know that anger you feel right now. That almost uncontrollable urge to explode when someone humiliates you, cuts you off in traffic, makes you feel small. Well, I need to tell you something that will hurt to hear. It's not about them. It was never about them. That flame that burns in your chest, that turns small offenses into storms. It wasn't born outside. It's yours. It always has been. And as long as you keep blaming the world for lighting that flame, you'll never discover the most liberating secret. Carl Jung left us. No one has the power to steal your calm, unless you hand over that key yourself. It sounds harsh, I know, because it's easier to point the finger at those who hurt you. It's easier to believe that anger is a deserved punishment for those who dared to disrespect you. But breathe, close your eyes and listen, because the truth no one told you is that anger is not an enemy. It's a messenger. Carl Jung said, "What we do not face within ourselves we will find as destiny." Do you understand? What you don't look at in yourself, what you bury in the darkness of your soul, is exactly what the world will make sure to show you, time and time again, until you finally see it. That hidden part that bothers you so much has a name: shadow. The shadow is the rejected side of who you are, the repository of pain, fears, insecurities, and memories you've tried to forget. And when someone says something hurtful, when someone does something that triggers you, it's not just about them. It's your shadow reacting, like a scared child, screaming for attention. And you, without realizing it, let it take the wheel. I remember Anna, a brilliant woman, but a hostage to her own anger. In a meeting, a colleague mocked one of her ideas. Her heart raced, her hands trembled, and she immediately retaliated, hurting herself more than him. Then, alone, she understood. It wasn't about the colleague. It was about the deep fear of not being good enough. A fear that began way back when her voice was first silenced as a child. When you begin to see this, everything changes, because pain stops being a monster in the dark and becomes a teacher. And that's what I want to tell you tonight. Your shadow is not an enemy to be defeated, but a part of you that needs to be heard. When you take a deep breath, when you pause before reacting, when you ask yourself honestly, what in me is bleeding now? You regain control. You begin, little by little, to transform anger into awareness. Jung said, "You do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by becoming conscious of darkness." It is in this dive inward, in this courageous look at one's own shadow, that peace begins to be born. So when someone tries to get on your nerves, breathe. Don't hand over your key to someone who doesn't deserve it. Ask yourself, why does this hit me so hard? What is my shadow trying to show me? This question is a key, and each time you use it, the flame within you becomes less destructive and more illuminating. Because it doesn't matter what they do to you out there. What matters is what you decide to do here inside. Believe me, no one can steal your peace without your consent. No one. And every time you choose to look at the shadow with compassion, every time you choose not to react impulsively, you are writing a new story for yourself. A story of strength, of wholeness, of true freedom. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Don't let the shadow guide you anymore. Choose to see, choose to listen, choose to understand. Because when you do, you become greater than any provocation. You become your own master, and no one can destabilize you anymore. Anger will still try to visit you, but you'll know it no longer rules you. Because now you know the secret that was always there, hidden within you. You don't need to be angry with anyone anymore, because no one out there has the power to steal the peace you've already decided to keep within yourself. And when anger strikes, can you sense the exact moment it takes hold of you? Or does everything seem so automatic that before you know it, you've already said what you didn't mean to, done what you didn't need to? There's a secret that changes everything between what hurt you and your reaction. There's always a space, a tiny, almost imperceptible space, but full of power. It's in this space that your true freedom lives, and I know you've felt it, even without naming it. That millisecond before the scream, that moment when your heart tightens and your breath catches, as if your body is begging you to just stop, but you don't. You react, and you regret it. Because today I want to invite you to see this space, to inhabit it. Because when you choose to use it, no one can knock you off balance. This space is your choice. Jung wasn't talking about a trick to appear calm, or to take revenge later with more class. He was talking about awareness, about deciding not to be a slave to your unconscious reactions. And to do that, you need to learn to pause. It may seem small, but it's revolutionary. A deep breath, 3 seconds of silence, a look within. And in that brief interval, instead of being swept away by impulse, you begin to choose, who do I want to be now? What truly matters to me? Is this person, this situation worth losing myself to? Carl Jung reminded us, between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom and our power of choice. It's simple, but nobody said it would be easy. I've seen this happen so many times. A man in traffic, cut off by another car, his hand already on the steering wheel, ready to honk and shout. But he took a breath, that's all, 3 seconds, and he realized that what bothered him wasn't just the car in front of him, but the feeling of always being late for everything in life. Or the teacher who hears an unfair parent complaining about her work. Her first impulse was to defend herself, but she paused, remembered her mission as an educator, and responded calmly. They both had a choice. And you can too. Do you know why this works? Because this pause takes you out of automatic mode. On automatic, you're just a reflection of your wounds, your insecurities, your unresolved memories. On automatic, the shadow takes over. But when you stop, the shadow doesn't disappear, but it loses control of the wheel. You choose who drives. And when you choose consciously, you not only protect your peace, you begin to become who you truly are. It may seem silly, but this pause is the beginning of a new chapter in your life. A life where you no longer react like a puppet to other people's triggers. A life where you write your own story, instead of being written by the world's provocations. A life that's more complete, calmer, more yours. I know because I also had to learn this the hard way, and it was one of the greatest gifts Jung taught me. So the next time someone hurts you with harsh words or petty actions, remember you have a space, a small space full of power. Breathe. 3 seconds, and ask yourself, what story do I want to tell now? This isn't just about appearing calm. It's about not giving your soul away to just anyone. It's about being your own boss, and the more you practice, the easier it gets. Until the day you realize, no one else controls how you feel. Only you. If these words touched you, if this pause already feels like an invitation to change, take advantage now to not let this flame die. Stay with us. Sign up here and continue walking alongside me on this journey toward a calmer world within yourself. Each new conversation can be another key to freeing yourself from the invisible chains that anger creates. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." You're already taking the first step toward this understanding. Now all that's left is to have the courage to inhabit the space. Choose and follow. This journey doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. When you begin to inhabit this space between trigger and reaction, you discover something curious. Much of your anger comes not just from what people say or do to you, but from how much you allow the world to invade your territory. There are people who say what they want, ask for what they want, demand what they want, and you, without realizing it, give up on yourself to please them. You accept it, you swallow it, you say yes when you want to say no. And then, at the end of the day, when anger turns to exhaustion, you wonder why you're so angry. The answer is simple yet painful. Because you forgot to put up a fence around your garden. Carl Jung said, "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens." And as you look within, you begin to realize where the other ends, and you begin. It is in this border that an essential concept lives: limits. Limits are not walls to keep the world out, but fences that protect what is most valuable within you. Because if you don't set them, others invade, not out of malice, but because it is human nature to occupy the free space. And every time someone steps on you, it's not just about them. It's about how much you failed to choose yourself. This awareness changes everything. You begin to realize that the anger you feel toward those who interrupt you, those who belittle you, those who abuse your goodwill, stems not only from what they did, but from what you didn't have the courage to say. Every time you betray yourself to avoid displeasing someone, your shadow grows, and it screams in the form of resentment, and anger, and you explode at the wrong people for the wrong reasons, without understanding why the flame within you remains lit. I saw this happen with Mia, a woman too kind for her own good. Everyone came to her for favors, co-workers, friends, even neighbors, and she, always smiling, said yes to everyone, even when inside she just wanted to rest. Until one day, exhausted, she exploded at her daughter for a trivial reason. She cried alone afterward, wondering why she couldn't control her own temper. Gradually, Mia realized it wasn't a lack of patience, it was a lack of boundaries. She was trying to be everything to everyone, and forgetting to be someone to herself. And it's like that for many of us. Anger is often not just a reaction to an attack, it's a symptom of self-abandonment. When you don't protect your space, your energy, your peace, you feel constantly invaded. And each invasion creates fissures, small, silent, until the day everything collapses. That's why Jung taught us about individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, even if it means disappointing others' expectations. Being who you are requires the courage to set boundaries, saying no when necessary, silence when it's inappropriate, choosing when you truly want to say yes. Boundaries aren't selfish, they're self-care. They're self-love in the form of firm words. When you begin to practice this, something magical happens. Anger dissolves. You no longer feel like the world is constantly against you, because you no longer allow the world to settle within you without permission. You begin to realize that your peace is your responsibility, and you begin to defend it like someone defending a rare and precious garden. You don't have to be aggressive to set boundaries. You don't have to hurt anyone. Just be clear. When a friend demands something you can't give, say, "I can't do it today." When a colleague overworks you at work, say, "I need to take care of my tasks first." When someone talks too much about their life without being invited, say, "I'd rather not comment on that." Simple words, spoken calmly but firmly. This is the strength of those who no longer want to live dominated by anger. Because every time you say yes to others and no to yourself, the flame grows. But every time you say no to what hurts you, you plant flowers in your garden. You feel the ground beneath your feet. You feel like you've come home, because you chose to protect yourself, because you finally looked within and said, "I matter too." And that's no small feat. It's an act of courage, one that gradually pacifies your soul, because when you start taking care of yourself, the whole world seems less threatening. And the anger that once dominated you becomes just a memory. It no longer finds a place to cling, because you're no longer free territory for those who don't know how to treat you well. So take a deep breath and look within right now. Ask yourself, what limits am I afraid to set? Where in my life have I abandoned myself to fit in with others? The answers will hurt, but they will also liberate, because there is no true peace without limits. There is no calm without courage, and there is no you without learning to protect yourself. Jung already reminded us, what we deny subjugates us. What we accept transforms us. Accepting that you deserve to protect your garden is the beginning of transformation, because no one else will take care of it for you, and no one else will respect it if you don't learn to do it yourself first. When you finally start setting boundaries and protecting your garden, another, even more profound discovery dawns upon you. It's not comfortable, it's not pretty, but it's necessary. You begin to notice that even with all this new clarity, certain words still hurt more than they should. Certain criticisms still have the power to tear you down. Certain people can still make you feel small with a simple look. It's as if, even though you're protecting yourself on the outside, on the inside, you're still too vulnerable. And then the inevitable question arises, why? The answer lies in the mirror that each criticism holds before you. Because deep down you already suspected what was said. Because somewhere in your shadow, you already believed that flaw to be true. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." This is the key. Criticism, no matter how unfair or harsh it may seem, is an invitation to look within. It's a mirror, and it only reflects what you yourself haven't yet accepted. Many spend their entire lives running away from these mirrors. They counter every comment, justify themselves, attack back, try to prove they're right. But the truth is that while you try to overcome the other person's voice, you're only trying to silence the most annoying voice, your own. The one that whispers that maybe they're a little bit right. Look, it's not easy to face this. I know. When someone calls us incompetent, arrogant, insensitive, selfish, it hurts. Not because it's absolutely true, but because on some level that shadow part recognizes something there. And this open wound, not yet addressed with care and courage, bleeds every time someone touches it. That's why every criticism feels like a deadly attack, because it touches places you yourself haven't addressed. It was like that with Alex, an intelligent man, dedicated to his work, but deeply insecure. When his boss called him to tell him his report was poorly done, Alex felt his blood boil. He returned to his desk furious, stewing over the injustice. But alone, he admitted, he himself had already thought that the report wasn't good enough. But I didn't want to face the feeling of failure. When he finally took a breath and looked within, he realized the criticism had only awakened an old fear of inadequacy. And so he began working, not to please his boss, but to heal this wound he himself carried. Have you ever stopped to think about this? Why do certain words hurt you more than others? Why does one person's criticism weigh so heavily, while another's barely affects you? Because what hurts isn't what they say, it's what you believe to be true about yourself. And that's why every criticism is an invitation to grow, to transform pain into strength, to look into the shadows and say, yes, I see you here, but you don't define me. You're not my whole self. Because criticism only destroys you when you believe it reveals who you are. But when you allow yourself to look within, recognize your weaknesses and work on them, no other person's words can completely shake you. And it's also important to remember, not all criticism is fair. Not all criticism is about you. Often it's the other person projecting their own insecurities and frustrations onto you. But even in these cases, you can still use this mirror to get to know yourself better. Ask yourself, why does this bother me so much if it's not true? What in me still needs reassurance to keep from trembling in the face of this? When you start seeing yourself this way, criticism becomes a tool, no longer a weapon against you, but a path to deepening your own process. That's when you stop fighting others and start building yourself. So the next time someone says something harsh, breathe, don't immediately respond. Ask yourself, what does this evoke in me? Is it true, or is this just my shadow trying to talk to me? And if so, silently thank them. Because even the harsh words of others can be stepping stones for you to climb. Carl Jung said, encountering yourself means, above all, encountering your own shadow, and nothing brings the shadow to the surface as quickly as a hurtful comment. Use it. Use every word as a mirror to see yourself with more honesty and compassion. And if any of these words you heard here today made you reflect on yourself, take a deep breath. Allow yourself to feel this truth slowly arriving, like a light shining through a crack. That's the beauty of self-knowledge. The more you see, the less others can hurt you. And if this message resonated with you right now, enjoy this moment. Because you deserve to recognize every small step forward, every new awareness, every new layer you discover within yourself. Every step you take on this path brings you closer to the whole free being you already carry within. And that alone is a reason to smile. After looking into the mirrors that life insists on holding up before us, there's an inevitable weight you begin to feel. The weight of everything you still carry, because it's not enough to acknowledge the criticism that hurts you, or to notice the wounds they touch. You also need to learn to let go. Let go of the resentment, the hurt, the resentment. And for many, This seems impossible. How can you let go of something that's been a part of you for so long? How can you let go of a pain that seems to have become your identity? The truth is that many people cling to resentment like someone clinging to a cold chain. They feel that if they let go, they'll be accepting what happened, letting those who hurt them go unpunished. But Jung warned us, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. And as you continue to choose to carry these chains, you continue to choose to be defined by the past. But why is it so difficult? Because anger, somehow, gives meaning. It feeds the wounded ego. It creates a narrative in which you are the victim, and the other is the villain. And as painful as this story is, it's familiar. It's comfortable. You know how to live in it. Letting go is a leap into the unknown. Letting go is choosing to make room for something new, and newness is scary. I met Emma, a young artist who carried a deep rage against her best friend, who betrayed her years ago. This rage consumed everything: her creativity, her relationships, her joy. Every time she created something, she thought about proving to her friend how wrong she was for doubting her. Every time she laughed, she felt guilty for being happy while still hating someone. One day, exhausted, Emma realized nothing she did was truly free. Everything still revolved around that pain, and it was in that moment that she understood she needed to let go of the chain, not to forgive her friend, not out of kindness, but for herself, because the anger was no longer within her. This is a hard lesson to digest. You don't let go to free the other person. You let go to free yourself. Because as long as you remain tied to that person, to that situation, you remain a prisoner of the past. As long as you insist on holding on to the hurt, it's like taking poison, hoping the other person will die. But the other person feels nothing. You're the one poisoning yourself, drop by drop, day after day. And it's not that you need to erase what happened. It's not that you need to pretend it didn't hurt, or that it was fair. It's just that you no longer need to let it define your present. You no longer need to carry baggage that no longer has anything to do with the person you're becoming. Because every time you let go, you create space to be whole again. I know it's scary. I know it feels unfair. Letting go can feel like you're relinquishing your own pain, as if it invalidates what you've suffered. But it's exactly the opposite. You honor your pain when you decide it will no longer control you. When you can look back, see the wound, and say, I'm not just this. I deserve more than this. Jung said, freedom is not doing what you want, but becoming who you really are. And to do that, you need to open your hands. You need to let go of the chains you've chosen to hold on to for so long. You need to accept that there's nothing noble in staying hurt forever, just to prove someone hurt you. Take a good look. Who are you when no one owes you anything? Who are you when resentment no longer occupies your space? Who are you when anger no longer dictates your thoughts? That person is already there inside. They're just waiting for you to let go. And letting go isn't a magical event. It's a process. Sometimes you have to let go of the same thing 10 times. Sometimes the hurt returns, and you have to let go again. But each time the weight becomes lighter. Each time the ground becomes firmer. Each time you feel yourself breathing a little easier. It starts like this. Recognize what still holds you back. Name the resentment, the anger, the resentment. Allow yourself to feel it all one last time, honestly, without disguise. Then ask yourself, what does this still give me? What part of me still thinks it needs this pain to be someone? And when the answer comes, look at it with compassion. You've done the best you could so far, but now you can choose differently. And little by little, gently, let go. Maybe by writing a letter that will never be sent. Maybe by crying silently. Maybe by simply taking a deep breath and saying softly to yourself, I release this now. Because each time you do this, the flame within you changes. It stops burning and begins to light up. There's nothing weak about letting go. Quite the opposite. It's an act of profound courage. It's proof that you no longer need to be defined by what hurt you. It's you telling the world and yourself that your story doesn't end in pain, that you deserve to walk lightly, that you choose to be more than what was done to you. And one day you wake up and realize the resentment is long gone. That anger doesn't visit you as often anymore. That the weight you carried is no longer on your shoulders. And then you understand, it wasn't magic. It was you. You finally, allowing yourself to be free. When you begin to release the chains that bound you to hurt and resentment, something unexpected happens. A silence begins to emerge within you. A new space, previously occupied by anger, now empty, light, almost strange. It's at this moment that many ask themselves, what now? What do I do with this emptiness? Because for years you've grown accustomed to being fueled by pain, driven by resentment. And when all that's gone, what remains? The possibility of something much greater, gratitude. It's hard to imagine, I know. How can someone who spent so much time angry with others, hurt by their words and overwhelmed by criticism, simply feel gratitude? But that's where true transformation begins. Because gratitude isn't a decoration for happy days. It's an antidote to everything that once hurt you. It doesn't erase the shadows, but it illuminates all that's still good, even amid them. Jung said, "There is no light without shadow, no psychic totality without imperfection." He knew that life will never be perfect, that people will continue to make mistakes, provoke you, frustrate you. But I also knew that choosing to look at the light is what makes it possible to endure and even appreciate the entire journey. And gratitude isn't a passive feeling, it's an act, a daily practice of noticing what remains, even when everything seems to fall apart. At first, it can be hard to see. You're still healing. The wounds still hurt, and it seems almost naive to be grateful in the midst of all this. But gratitude doesn't wait for everything to be perfect to appear. It's born from the little things, from the air you breathe when you wake up, from the strength you found to say no yesterday, from the relief you felt when you decided to release that old anger. Gratitude is recognizing the ground you've already covered, even if you haven't reached the top yet. I met David, a man who spent years feeling like a victim of circumstance. He said everything went wrong for him, that no one respected him, that the world seemed to delight in humiliating him. Until the day when, at his therapist's insistence, he began writing down one good thing a day, no matter how small. On the first day, he wrote, "The coffee was hot and good." On the second, "The driver smiled at me." On the third, "I managed not to yell at my boss." Days turned into weeks, and David began to realize that even on the worst days, something remained. There was always something to be grateful for. And this didn't erase the problems, but it changed the way he faced them. This is what gratitude is. It's not denying pain, but refusing to let it be all you see. It's learning to look at the same scenario and realize that beyond the chaos, there is also calm. Beyond the noise, there is also silence. Beyond the shadow, there is also light. You begin to realize that even the people who hurt you most taught you valuable lessons, that every criticism, every invasion, every rude gesture showed you where your wounds lay and helped you heal them. That every time someone tried to throw you off balance, you had the chance to learn more about yourself. And that's a reason to be grateful, because without these experiences, you wouldn't have learned to pause, to set boundaries, to let go. Gratitude is also a shield. The more you practice it, the less the world's small aggressions can penetrate you. You stop waiting for others to change for you to feel at peace, because you've already found within yourself reasons to remain whole, despite them. No matter what they say, no matter how they treat you, there's always something within you that remains untouched, and that deserves to be celebrated. And the beauty of gratitude is that it expands. The more you practice it, the more reasons you find to continue. It starts with a small detail, a hot coffee, a smile, and becomes an entire worldview. You begin to see that even shadows have beautiful contours, that even flaws tell stories, that even pain has shaped you into who you are today. Jung reminded us that we cannot be complete without integrating all parts of ourselves, light and shadow. And gratitude is the link that allows you to hold both with equal tenderness. That you look at yourself, imperfections and all, and say, still, I am grateful. It's not a one-day task, it's a journey, a daily practice, a choice you make every morning when you open your eyes, choosing to be grateful for another chance to be better than you were yesterday. And little by little, you realize that anger no longer visits you as often, that hurt no longer screams so loudly, that criticism no longer cuts so deeply. Because in the heart of someone who is grateful, there isn't much room for hate. And so you discover that the calm you sought outside was always here, inside you, waiting for you to notice it. Because gratitude doesn't transform the world outside, but it completely transforms the world you carry inside. And that's when everything changes. Over time, as you let go of anger, learn to be grateful for the little things, and recognize the light hidden behind the shadows. Another, deeper layer reveals itself. You begin to realize that, for too long, you've been listening too much to outside voices, other people's criticism, other people's judgment, other people's expectations. All these voices shaped your attitude toward the world. You acted to please, to prove you were enough, to avoid rejection. And now that the noise of all this has subsided, only one question remains: where is your own voice? Perhaps you felt this before, that strange silence when the internal struggles cease. It's an emptiness that seems to ask, who am I without anger? Who am I without the need to constantly defend myself? This is where the most beautiful and scariest part of this journey begins. This is where you rediscover your own essence, often forgotten beneath the layers of pain life has forced you to wear. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you truly are. And that doesn't just mean integrating the shadow and embracing the light. It means discovering your innermost truth, what only you can say about yourself. Because in the end, it doesn't matter what others think of you. It doesn't matter if the world applauds or rejects you. What matters is whether you can look yourself in the mirror and hear your own voice saying, this is it, this is me. But finding that voice isn't easy. It's been muffled by years of conditioning, fear, and the masks you wore to survive. It was silenced when you chose to fit in, rather than be excluded. It was forgotten every time you prioritized the desires of others over your own. And now that you're lighter, more aware, it begins to whisper again. But whispers require attentive listening. That's what happened to Lucas, a 38-year-old man who spent his life working jobs he didn't like, just to meet his family's expectations. He was a good son, a good husband, an exemplary employee. But he always harbored a latent anger, a poorly explained dissatisfaction. When he began to let go of the resentment, to be grateful for what he already had, and to set boundaries, he found himself facing that same silence. That's when he realized for years he had ignored what he truly wanted. He never asked himself what made him happy. Little by little, Lucas began to hear his own voice, the voice that told him he'd always wanted to paint. And when he finally bought paints and brushes and set up a small studio at home, the anger that had haunted him for decades simply disappeared. This is what listening to your own voice is all about. It's reconnecting with your purest essence. It's stopping living on autopilot, guided by outside noise. It's stopping to ask, what do I really want? What is my desire, not the desire others have projected onto me? It's this listening that makes you whole. And sometimes by listening to your own voice, you may discover things you didn't expect. That you no longer want what you spent years pursuing. That the dream that seemed so important no longer makes sense. That what you need most right now is rest, not achievement. Or affection, not approval. And that's okay. Because truly listening to yourself is accepting change as a natural part of who you are. This reunion is also a liberation, because you stop living to respond to the world's provocations and start living in response to yourself. You stop letting yourself be defined by what was done to you, and begin to define yourself by who you choose to be. You stop reacting to what hurts, and begin to create what heals you. Jung said, "He who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakens." Hearing your own voice is this awakening. It's leaving the trance of anger, resentment, and entering a state of presence. It's ultimately taking ownership of yourself. Perhaps you've heard this voice at some point, in a dream, on a walk alone, in a moment of silence before sleep. Perhaps you've felt that inexplicable pull that calls you to something greater, something you can't yet put into words. This is your soul calling you back home. And I sit here wondering, what is your voice trying to tell you? Suf. What truth have you been ignoring, hiding, stifling? If you can, share it with me too. Sometimes putting into words what we hear in our hearts is already a powerful act of courage. And even more beautiful is seeing how stories intersect, how our voices meet and strengthen each other. Because every time someone dares to say what they truly feel, they give permission for others to do the same. After all, your voice is unique, and it deserves to be heard, not just by you but by the entire world. Once you start listening to your own voice, something even more subtle begins to happen. It's as if a new kind of silence arises within you, a different silence from the one that once suffocated you, made of swallowed grief and unspoken words. This is now a serene silence, full of meaning, an inner space, where all that you are finally finds a place to rest. It's in this silence that anger finally loses its power, not because the world outside has become less cruel, but because there's no longer as much room for it to echo within you. This silence doesn't come from nowhere. It's built, little by little, every time you decide not to retaliate, every time you set a healthy boundary, every time you let go of what no longer serves you and pay attention to what truly matters. It grows every time you choose to listen to your own voice, instead of the voices of others. Each conscious choice is another brick in this silent house where your soul can finally rest. Jung said, "Loneliness doesn't come from not having people around, but from not being able to talk about the things that are important to us." And it's true. For a long time you thought being at peace meant being surrounded by people who understand you, or living a life free from conflict. But little by little you realize that peace arises from an inner silence, from a harmony between all of you, even the parts you previously rejected. And when this harmony arrives, even the provocations of others lose their importance. That's how Clara discovered this silence. She was a restless woman, always ready to respond in kind, to prove she didn't take offense. On the outside she appeared strong. Inside it was a battlefield. Everything offended her. Everything hurt her. One day, after an argument with her sister, she found herself sitting on the bedroom floor, silent. And in that silence, she heard something she'd never heard before, that she was tired of fighting. Not with her sister, not with the world, but with herself. And there in that moment, she decided to stop. Not like someone who gives up, but like someone who finally understands that she no longer needs to fight her own shadow to be worthy of herself. This silence isn't an absence of voice. On the contrary, it's fertile ground, where your voice can finally flourish. When you quiet yourself inside, when you no longer need to prove anything to anyone, criticism, insults, and attacks have nowhere to land. They hit the edges of this silence and fall to the ground, powerless. And you can look at them without being shaken, because you already know who you are. You've heard your truth. And this silence also brings compassion, because when you understand yourself, you understand others. You realize that those who yell, who insult, who provoke, are actually only at war with themselves. And you no longer need to enter the battle, because you already been there, because you already know what it's like, and you've already chosen to leave. This stillness is powerful, because it doesn't depend on what others do. It's yours, yours alone. You can be in chaotic traffic, in a tense meeting, in a difficult discussion, and still feel this calm within, because it's not created externally, It's created by the choices you make day after day. Jung said that the encounter with oneself is the most feared thing, but also the greatest of all adventures. This inner silence is proof that you're already living this adventure. It allows you to clearly see who you are, with all your light and shadow, and still feel peace. Sure. Make no mistake, the world will never stop testing you. Difficult people, unfair situations, and harsh words will still come your way. But now you carry something no one can take away, a clarity that cannot be destroyed by a dirty look or unfair criticism, because you no longer need to defend yourself against everything. You no longer need to react to everyone. You can simply remain silent within and move forward whole. This serenity is the greatest proof that you are no longer at the mercy of what others do or say. It's proof that you've finally found a home within yourself. And in that home there's room for you to be human, imperfect, vulnerable, and yet whole. And I wonder if every person in the world discovered this silence within themselves. How many wars could cease to exist? How many misunderstandings could be avoided? How many hurts could be healed? Because silence heals. It doesn't erase wounds, but allows them to heal. It doesn't transform pain into joy, but transforms it into understanding. It doesn't make the world stop, but helps you find your own rhythm. In the end, you understand that the peace you've always sought outside has always been here, waiting, patiently, within you, at the center of your being, in the silence that only you can build. When silence finally settles within you, something begins to become unbearably visible, the masks you still wear. Because even as you find peace, even as you feel calm growing within, there's still that feeling of playing roles that aren't quite yours. Roles inherited, learned, forced. Roles created to survive in a noisy, judgmental world. And it's at this point in your journey that you realize that to truly remain at peace, you'll need to gradually shed the masks you've spent years wearing. Carl Jung spoke of the persona as the face we show the world, that facade we use to fit in, to be accepted. It's functional. We all have it. We all need it to some degree. The problem is when we forget who we are behind it. When the mask sticks to our face and we mistake the role for the essence. This is how the internal tensions that anger tries to hide arise, the pain of not being completely yourself. The masks you wear didn't arise by chance. They were created to protect you. The mask of strength to hide vulnerability. The mask of indifference to camouflage the wound of abandonment. The mask of sympathy to disguise the fear of rejection. And while you held them, often without even realizing it, they also imprisoned you. Because to keep the mask in place, you had to suppress parts of yourself. You had to silence your voice. You had to swallow your own truth. When you finally begin to hear your voice, when silence gives you the courage to listen, the painful realization dawns that you can't keep hiding. You begin to ask yourself, who am I without these masks? The answer isn't immediate. And that's why it's scary. Because you fear that there might be nothing beneath them, or that what exists isn't enough. But this fear is just another shadow, trying to keep you in the known. I remember Helena, a woman who spent her life smiling. She was kind, pleasant, always willing to help. Inside, however, she felt immense fatigue, constant anger and resentment for never feeling truly seen. When she began her journey of self-discovery, she thought she simply needed to control her impulses. But little by little, she realized that what irritated her most wasn't others, but her own inability to show her true colors. Every yes, she said when she meant no. Every concession made for fear of displeasing. Every forced smile to avoid conflict. These were small betrayals of herself that built up resentment. Until one day, she dared to be honest. He said no without smiling. He cried without apologizing. He remained silent instead of feigning interest. And she felt the weight of the masks falling away, one by one. This process isn't pretty at first. People around you find it strange, complain, and demand that you return to being like before. After all, your masks also serve their comfort. But little by little, you discover a new lightness, the lightness of not having to perform, The lightness of not carrying other people's expectations as if they were your obligation. The lightness of being just you. And you begin to notice that the anger you felt before is fading, because it was, in part, the result of the immense effort to keep those masks intact. It was the pain of feeling invisible behind them. When you begin to reveal yourself, even slowly, even if only to yourself, the anger no longer makes sense. There's nothing left to protect. There's nothing left to prove. Jung said, freedom extends as far as conscience goes. And you realize that to be free, you must first see all the masks you've constructed to survive. And then, one by one, choose which ones no longer serve you. Some you'll keep, because they're still necessary in certain contexts. But others you'll finally have the courage to let go of. And with each mask that falls, a hidden piece of you reveals itself. And that piece, however imperfect, however wounded, is real. It's you. And there's nothing more powerful than being whole in your own imperfection. So you move on, lighter, truer, learning not to be held hostage by the persona you once believed you needed to maintain to be loved. Because now you know, no one can take away your peace when you no longer have anything to hide. When you no longer wear masks to protect your soul. When you no longer pretend to be someone you're not just to fit into other people's molds. And little by little, you begin to understand that the entire journey thus far, the anger, the gratitude, the silence, the listening, the surrender, was in fact just a long road to finding what was always there. You, no filters, no disguises, no masks, just you. And finally, that's enough. We've reached the end of this journey. And if you've made it this far, know that you're walking on rare and precious ground. Not everyone has the courage to look within, to face their own shadow, to release the chains of anger, and take off the masks that hide their true selves. You are privileged, someone who refused to be a prisoner of their own emotions, who chose to know themselves, challenge themselves. This in itself is already an immense victory. This transformation isn't an endpoint. It's a living, ongoing process that renews itself every day. Every time you choose to pause in the midst of chaos, every time you say no to what steals your peace, every time you allow yourself to hear your true voice, you become more whole, more authentic, more free. Carl Jung left us this profound wisdom. The greatest and most important form of encounter is the encounter with oneself. You chose to find yourself, and this encounter, though challenging, is the most powerful you can have. Because it is in it that true freedom resides, the freedom to be who you are, without fear, without masks, without impulsive reactions, the freedom to respond to the world calmly, with awareness, with self-love. When you become master of your emotions, when you no longer allow anger to dictate your actions, you transform not only your life, but everything around you. You inspire those who cross your path to also seek this inner peace. You become a beacon in the midst of the storm, a presence that is not easily shaken, an example of calm strength. So if this journey touched you, if it awakened a desire to continue deepening your self-knowledge and the search for true calm, I invite you to join us. Sign up here, because this isn't a journey that needs to be solitary. It's an invitation to a community that seeks to grow together, that shares stories, challenges, and achievements. Like this video, so more people can discover that it is possible not to be shaken by anyone, that true peace is born within us, and that transformation begins when we choose to look at our shadow with courage and compassion. And most importantly, comment below, what was the biggest discovery you made on this journey? What step have you already started taking? What shadow are you ready to face? Sharing your story is an act of courage, and could be the light someone needs to begin their own transformation. You are privileged because you are among those who no longer accept living at the mercy of uncontrolled emotions, who desire the freedom to choose how to feel and how to react. This is a rare gift, the chance to become your own master and write a new story, one where you are not a victim, but a protagonist. Always remember, no one can steal your peace if you don't hand over the key. And you already have that key. It's within you, ready to be used at any moment. All it takes is the decision to look within, to ask the difficult questions, to embrace all parts of yourself. You are no longer at the mercy of what others do or say. You chose to be whole. You chose to be free. You chose to be you. This is your greatest victory. This is your new story. Thank you for walking with me this far. May the light you lit within you never go out until the next journey.